The sky was burning red over planet Vectel 9. Fire rained from orbit as explosions rippled through the mountains. The native species, the Zarkel, ran toward their armored bunkers, claws dragging behind them. They had seen war before. They had conquered 5 systems. They had crushed rebellions with single strikes. They were feared across the Orion Rim. Other species called them Deathworlders because their homeworld had volcanoes, ice storms, acid rains, and even evolved weapons in its wildlife. No one dared fight the Zarkel directly. Until now, a single human ship had entered their system 6 hours ago. Small, slow, not even equipped with heavy shields. The Zarkel laughed. They sent warning shots, then a full warning fleet. The ship didn't retreat. It just kept coming. And then it disappeared. Within the next 20 minutes, 7 outposts stopped responding. No signals, no escape pods, no survivors. Panic began to spread, but the Zarkel commander, Threx Vulcan, kept calm. He ordered full planetary lockdown and launched every drone, satellite, and warship into alert. His claws tapped the metal table, waiting for the enemy to appear. Then the human landed alone, not a battalion, not a fleet. Just one human, walking calmly into the dust storm outside the capital station. The scanner showed no armor, no weapons. Just a man in black, carrying a small device on his belt. Vulcan stared at the screen, confused. This had to be a trick. Bring him in, Vulcan ordered. Alive. I want to know who dares challenge a Deathworlder alone. 4 Zarkel soldiers, armed with shock blades and reinforced exosuits, were set out. The cameras followed their movements until static wiped the feed. A minute passed, then 2. No signal. Vulcan's second-in-command blinked nervously. Then the human walked into the command room. He was dragging one of the exosuits behind him like it was made of feathers. The other Zarkel soldiers were nowhere to be seen. The human dropped the suit on the floor. No words, just a look. Calm, steady, almost bored. Vulcan stood up slowly. He had fought merciless enemies, parasites from the Shadow Nebula, rogue AI. Swarms, but nothing like this creature in front of him. Who are you? Vulcan demanded. The human finally spoke. You said you were Deathworlders, he said. You've never met Earth, Vulcan growled. We've crushed planets with higher gravity. We've walked through lava storms. Your world doesn't scare. US, the human nodded. That's what they all said. Before they saw what real danger looks like. There was no warning before the lights flickered. Every system shut down. The defense grids. The oxygen regulators. The entire command center. Blacked out. Emergency lighting kicked in. But the screens were dead. Every alert was frozen. A virus had entered their core. Vulcan turned to shout orders, but the human was already standing behind him. No sound. No movement. Just there. Vulcan didn't even feel the strike. Just the cold sting of his armor breaking and his body hitting. The floor. The human didn't kill him. He whispered something instead. This isn't conquest. This is a message. Then the human vanished, leaving Vulcan paralyzed and confused. Across Vectel 9, systems were collapsing, not from bombs. Not from plasma strikes. From precise attacks-controlled detonations. Gravity waves in the right places, explosions so quiet no one noticed until it was too late. Entire bunkers turned to dust without even hearing an impact. The Zarkel were not fighting a war. They were being dissected. By morning, half the planet's military grid was gone. Vulcan's advisors begged for surrender. But pride ran deep in the Zarkel. He wanted to strike back. He wanted to find the human's ship. He wanted to send a message to Earth, but Earth never answered their transmissions. Because Earth hadn't sent this man. He wasn't part of a fleet. He wasn't following orders. He was just one of them. One human. One message. One warning. Don't provoke the real monsters of the galaxy. By the time the Zarkil tried to evacuate, it was too late. Their orbital stations began to drift, softly spinning out of control without any explosion. Something had disabled their inertia control. Their city started losing gravity alignment. Children and elders floated into ceilings. Buildings cracked from the inside. But still, no sign of a human anywhere, only recordings, footage of their soldiers frozen in place. Screens looping one phrase in dozens of languages. You called yourselves Deathworlders. You were wrong. Vulcan sat alone in the dark bunker, the last safe zone left on Vectal 9. He had sent out a final message to the Council of Lords. Earth is not what we thought. We have awakened something worse. But no reply came. Outside, the wind began to howl differently, not from storms. From something heavy landing far away. Something big. Multiple shadows moved across the hills. And Vulcan realized something, even worse than defeat. The human was not alone anymore. More were coming. And the galaxy would never be the same again. Asterisk. Smoke rose across Vectal 9 like a blanket of ash. Entire cities had gone quiet. The proud towers of the Zarkil Empire now leaned sideways, cracked and flickering. Roads that once buzzed with war machines were now covered in dust. But the true horror wasn't destruction. It was silence. Nothing made sense anymore. No declaration of war, no demands, no faces behind the attack. Just precision strikes, invisible sabotage, and a single human who walked through their capital and disappeared. Without a trace. The Zarkil, who had once classified themselves as Deathworlders, were facing an enemy that didn't even try to conquer. It was dismantling them piece by piece. In the underground bunkers far from the main cities, Commander Vulcan was still recovering from the humans' earlier encounter. He sat in a reinforced chair, his breathing heavy and slow. Painkillers dulled the pain, but not the fear. Around him, his generals argued. Some wanted to retreat. Others wanted to strike Earth directly, but none of them knew how. They didn't even know where the human came from. Vulcan raised his hand. Find out if there are more. I want locations, footage, anything. We must understand this threat before it finishes us. Scouts were sent across the broken zones of Vectal 9. What they found shook their understanding even more. In city after city, underground labs, AI cores and genetic vaults had been tampered with, but not destroyed. The human hadn't come to break everything. He had studied them, recorded them, and left behind silent warnings. One scout returned with footage from a deep vault. A human stood there, staring into a stasis chamber where the Zarkil had kept forbidden weapons. He wasn't afraid. He spoke to the camera. You call yourselves Deathworlders, but you fear what you cannot control. That's not strength. That's cowardice. Then he walked away, leaving the chamber unlocked, but undamaged. Footage ended with one sentence scratched into the wall. We are not like you. We don't conquer. We end wars. Far from the cities, in a remote jungle province, a small group of rebels watched these events with mixed feelings. They were Zarkil too, but not loyal to the Empire. For years they had tried to resist the military machine that had turned their world into a prison. Their leader, a scientist named Velka, watched the news in silence. Her eyes were cold, but her voice was hopeful. This human didn't come to destroy us, she said. He came to destroy the ones in power. We may not understand his ways, but we know what fear looks like. And right now the Empire is afraid. One of her younger aides looked confused. You want to contact him? No, she said. I want to contact his kind. Velka opened an old radio array buried under years of vines. It wasn't made by Zarkil hands. It was alien tech, forbidden, recovered from a fallen trade ship long ago. She activated it and began sending out a signal coded, careful, but clear. To Earth, we are not all enemies here. Some of us believe in peace. Some of us want to stop this war. Help us, before your enemy becomes our grave too." She didn't know if Earth would hear. She didn't even know if the human who came was listening. But the message was out now. All she could do was wait. Back in orbit above Vectel 9, something shifted. A new object entered the system, no heat signature. No weapons, just a single black cube floating silently above the planet. It wasn't shaped like any Zarkel or allied tech. And it didn't respond to hails. Vulcan's advisors panicked. What is it? Another attack? A fleet beacon? But Vulcan had seen enough. He stood weakly and stared at the screen. It's not an attack, it's a warning. The cube sent one message, written in perfect Zarkel script. You think danger is about weapons. Real danger is what walks silently and strikes with purpose. Stop now, or your species will fade into legend. Vulcan clenched his jaw. They want surrender? No, one officer whispered. They want us to think. For the first time in generations, the Empire was forced to pause, not by defeat, but by uncertainty. They couldn't predict this enemy. They couldn't measure its power. They couldn't classify humans as stronger, smarter, or more dangerous. In traditional ways, because humans weren't following any known rule of war. And deep in the stars, a second message reached Velka's hidden camp. The Earth signal came through. It was short. And it chilled her bones. We heard you. Help is coming. She looked at her team. Then we'd better survive until they arrive. Above them, in the sky, a streak of blue light broke the clouds. Another human was coming to Vectel 9. The blue streak tore across the sky like a silent blade. Unlike Zarkel ships, it made no sound, left no smoke, and gave no warning. The object crashed gently into the jungle province where Velka's rebel camp was hidden. Trees bent from the impact but didn't burn. Dust rose, then settled in seconds. The jungle fell quiet again. Velka stood with her team, staring at the crater. No one dared speak. Even the birds had stopped singing. From the center of the crater, a figure rose taller than the first human they had seen, dressed in dark gray. Armor that didn't reflect light. He looked around slowly, then walked toward Velka's group, as if he had expected them. No weapons raised. No commands. Just calm steps. Velka took a breath and stepped forward. You heard our message? The human nodded. Earth listens when someone speaks truth. She stared at him. Why are you here? The first one. He left us broken. The human looked toward the sky. He was a scout. I am the answer. Velka didn't understand, but she felt something behind his words. Her people stepped back, uncertain. She motioned for them to stay calm. What do you want from us? I want nothing, the human said. But you want freedom. And that means your people must choose. Velka's voice trembled slightly. They will never listen to us. The Empire is built on fear. Then make them listen, he said. Or fear something greater. Before Velka could speak again, the human touched a small device on his wrist. A glowing map of Vectel 9 appeared in midair. Points of light showed every Zarkel military zone, energy route, supply base, and hidden vault. Velka's team gasped. No one, not even the Empire, had a map this detailed. This is everything, the human said. Take it. Share it. Turn the people against their rulers. Velka reached out, her hand shaking. How did you get this? The human didn't answer. Instead, he looked at her one last time. We don't invade. We don't conquer. We awaken. And once a world is awake, it never forgets. Then he stepped backward into the crater. A soft hum filled the air, and in seconds he was gone. No ship, no flame. Just silence again. Velka clutched the map. In the capital city, Commander Vulcan watched from his private chamber. His body was weaker now. His claws didn't move like before. The last report he received showed rebel messages spreading like wildfire. Cities in the south had stopped sending troops. Power stations had gone. dark by accident. Civilians were talking in whispers, not about rebellion, but about humans. They called them ghosts, shadows. Some called them gods. Others called them the end of time. But no one called them weak. And that terrified the Empire more than anything. Else Vulcan's second-in-command entered with shaky breath. "Commander, another human has arrived." "But not on Vectal 9. Vulcan looked up. "Where?" "The moon colony. They shut down our comms. No damage, but ... They left a message." He handed over a simple device. It lit up with human language. Translated instantly, it read, "This is not war. This is your final test. Choose who you want to be." Vulcan stared at the message for a long time. The room felt colder. He knew what it meant. The humans were giving them a chance, not to win, but to become something else. Something better. Or disappear. On the outer edges of the system, ships from 3 different alien races began arriving. They had once been allies of the Zarkel Empire, or at least tolerated it. But now they came not to help, but to watch. They had heard about the human attacks, the precision, the speed, and the silence. And they wanted to see if the legends were true. One of the alien envoys, a 6-eyed being named Tressa, stood in orbit and whispered to her captain, "These humans, they do not conquer land. They conquer fear." Back on the surface, Velka used the human map to broadcast a new message. She didn't ask for war. She didn't ask for loyalty. She just showed the truth, the locations of secret prisons, the stolen resources, the lies told to the people for decades. Her message ended with words most Zarkel had never heard. "You believed we were Deathworlders, but true strength is not fear. It is choice. And now we all must choose." Within 2 days, 5 cities declared neutrality. 2 major generals refused to follow orders. And civilian protests began in every major district. The Empire was bleeding, not from wounds, but from within. Vulcan stood alone in his command room. He turned off the lights and watched the planet from his window. So much power, so much pride, and now so much fear. Not from armies or fleets, but from people realizing the truth. And from beings they still didn't understand. The humans had shown them something worse than war. A world without lies. A world where the Zarkel were no longer the strongest dot and deep in space. Earth watched silently, preparing one final move. Asterisk, the Empire had never seen such confusion. Orders were being ignored. Ranks were dissolving. Citizens were refusing to report for duty. And still, no human army had landed, not one fleet, not one drone. Yet city by city, the Zarkel control was falling. Velka's message had changed everything. Human data she received wasn't just a map. It was proof of how the High Council manipulated population numbers, hid food from outer provinces, and destroyed their own rebel towns to gain sympathy from allies. Now the truth was everywhere. Broadcast towers lit up with recordings. Citizens watched footage of captured scientists begging for forgiveness. None of it was forged. All of it was real, and humans had delivered it without killing a single child. Elder or civilian, Velka's camp had grown 3 times larger in just 1 week. Former soldiers came asking for shelter. Old enemies now stood side by side, digging new bunkers together. But not everyone welcomed change. In the northern regions, 2 major warlords refused to submit. They gathered loyalists, hoarded weapons, and declared open rebellion against both Earth and their own kind. They claimed the humans were invaders pretending to be peaceful. Velka knew this was dangerous. If those warlords attacked first, Earth might strike back without warning. And she didn't know what kind of weapons they were holding back. So she sent a message to Earth again. This time her voice was firm. "We need your help. Not to fight, but to stop the ones still trapped in the past. Give us a chance to end this with peace." She didn't expect a reply, but an answer came, just 2 words: "Send coordinates." Velka gave the location of the two warlords' bases, both buried deep in the polar mountains. Within an hour, the sky above the region turned dark, not from clouds, but from something massive overhead. Civilians panicked, thinking a weapon was about to fire, but nothing happened. Instead, all communication systems in the north went dead. Screens went blank. Weapons froze in their storage bays. Engines refused to start. Lights flickered until the entire region went dark. Then, just as quickly, everything came back. The warlords' vaults were open. Their secrets were exposed. Footage of their cruelty played across their own cities. Every base camera had been turned against them. Even the private logs of their betrayals were broadcast by the humans. No deaths, just truth. The people turned on the warlords. They were arrested by their own guards. The last loyalists gave up without resistance. And the humans never appeared, not even a shadow. Just silence again, followed by peace. In the Zarkil capital, Commander Vulcan watched the collapse from his command tower. His empire had not fallen from invasion. It had melted under its own lies. The humans didn't even fire a weapon after that first scout. They didn't need to. They used precision. Information. Pressure. Now, Vulcan stood at the edge of a choice no Zarkil leader had faced in centuries. One of surrender, not just of territory but of ego. He knew that if he held on to power, humans would eventually break what was left. But if he gave it up, his legacy would vanish. He stepped out onto the balcony where press cameras waited. His eyes scanned the crowd. There were protesters, soldiers, reporters, and hovering quietly above, a single black drone shaped like a sphere, bearing no weapons. A human machine. He raised his clawed hand and began to speak. For thousands of cycles, we believed our world was the strongest. That death and survival were the only truths worth honoring. We taught our children to fear weakness, to destroy emotion. And now we stand before a power that does not crush but unmakes. The crowd was silent. Vulcan's voice lowered. We called ourselves Deathworlders, but we were blind. Earth did not come to enslave us, it came to awaken us. He lowered his hand. I resign. That word had never been spoken by a Zarkil ruler before. The crowd didn't cheer, they didn't riot. They simply watched, unsure of what came next. But they knew something had changed. Across Vectal 9, flags came down. Military uniforms were folded away. Walls were painted over. Schools reopened. And Velka, once hunted by her own people, now stood beside scientists and builders, helping repair what had been broken. The humans didn't speak again. They didn't land. Didn't demand tribute. They just observed from the edge of space, silently ensuring the Zarkil didn't fall back into old patterns. A new order was forming, not an empire, but something else, one led not by fear, but by those who had seen real danger and chosen peace instead. And still, the galaxy whispered the same question. What kind of species had that much power, and chose not to use it? The galaxy was watching Vectal 9 closely. Across allied systems and rival empires, screens showed images of Zarkil statues being taken down, of rebel children painting peace symbols on armored walls, and of one human drone hovering silently over each city, not as a weapon, but as a reminder. The humans were still there, watching, listening, not forcing control, but making sure peace held. On the diplomatic network, hundreds of alien governments debated what to do. Should they welcome Earth, fear it? Try to negotiate before it turned its attention elsewhere? One leader of the Gareth coalition said softly during a council meeting, they didn't invade. They didn't demand territory. They didn't even ask for resources. They broke a Deathworlder empire without touching the soil twice. What if they turned toward us next? Many agreed. Some were afraid. Others were curious. But on Earth, the response was quiet. No official statement. No recorded celebration. No threats. Only a line of new encryption codes sent out to their galactic listening posts, followed by a shift in deep space frequencies. Something was changing, but no one knew what. Back on Vectel 9, Velka stood at the new Council of Unity building. It was a temporary structure made from salvaged materials, set up in the former Imperial War Plaza. Where missiles were once displayed, now stood gardens. She looked around at the circle of representatives. Some were former enemies. Others were farmers, teachers, even refugees. This wasn't a government built on dominance. It was built on survival, and Earth had allowed it to happen, but Velka knew they weren't finished. There was still one last question no one dared ask. Why did the humans really come? A visitor answered that question. It happened quietly. No ships, no fanfare. Just a knock at the door of Velka's research outpost one evening. A young man stood there, human, dressed in plain clothes, carrying no weapon, no badge, no armor. He didn't give his name. He only said, "I'm from Earth, may I come in?" Velka allowed him inside. He didn't sit. He looked around the lab, then at her. "You've done well," he said. "But the message isn't complete yet." Velka frowned. "What do you mean?" The man pulled a small black cube from his pocket. It began to project maps of other planets, red dots flashing across distant systems. Zarkel rule didn't stop here. Their fleets and weapons are still hidden across outposts and satellite colonies. Their influence reached further than you know. Velka looked closer. Some of those colonies were places she had never heard of. "Why show me this?" "Because we didn't come to destroy one planet," the man said. "We came to stop something spreading across the stars. And we won't always be the ones cleaning it up. Now it's your turn." Velka's voice was cautious. "You want us to help other worlds?" The man nodded. "You've seen the truth. Now it's your responsibility to share it. Or the cycle starts again somewhere else." He placed the cube on her desk. "We won't interfere unless needed. Earth doesn't build empires. We erase the need for them." Then he walked out of the lab and vanished into the night. Velka held the cube in her hand for hours. Inside it were files, coordinates, intercepted messages from ex-Zarkel generals now hiding off-world. The scope of what the humans had uncovered was terrifying. They hadn't just studied Vectel 9. They had studied everything. Earth had let them stand back up, but now expected them to walk on their own. The next morning, Velka stood before the new council and explained everything. Not everyone agreed. To act, some feared Earth would watch every step they took. Others feared failing. But slowly, over days, volunteers signed up. Scientists, scouts, engineers. A new Zarkel team, now free from their old empire, was ready to reach out, not as conquerors, but as healers. And Earth watched, silently approving. Elsewhere in the galaxy, however, things weren't quiet. One of the exiled Zarkel warlords who escaped justice had reached a different world. There, in the shadows of an industrial trade colony, he had started whispering to alien mercenaries, spreading lies, building something, waiting, he believed. Humans wouldn't act again. That Earth's silence meant weakness, but Earth heard everything. In a dark chamber beneath the Pacific Ocean. Deep inside Earth's classified orbital command, a voice spoke quietly to a group of watchers. New threat forming. Same pattern, same ambition. Someone nodded. Double quotes, "We give them a chance," said the voice. Once, the others agreed. Because Earth didn't strike first. But it never struck twice. Asterisk. The stars above Vectel 9 looked different now. For generations, they had watched those lights with pride, believing they were meant to conquer them all. But now, those same stars held a quiet warning. A lesson burned into their history. Power was not about fear. It was about restraint. Velka stood at the new spaceport, watching the launch of the Zarkel peace mission. A single ship, equipped with aid supplies, engineers, doctors, and historians, was lifting off toward a small, war-damaged moon colony once exploited by the old empire. This time, the Zarkel were not coming to rule. They were coming to rebuild what they had once destroyed. Beside her, a representative from Earth stood silently. He wore no armor, no medals, just the simple badge of Earth's observation corps. His role wasn't to command. It was only to witness. Velka looked at him. "Will Earth stay with us?" He didn't smile. But his eyes were calm. "Until we know you don't need us anymore." A soft wind passed as the ship vanished into the sky. Peace had begun to feel real. But peace was never guaranteed. And far away, in the shadow systems near the rim, the one exiled Zarkel warlord had gathered strength. Mercenaries, corrupted diplomats, and rogues joined him. He promised a return of the empire. A new kind of domination. Not with honor but with manipulation. He believed Earth would not interfere again. He was wrong. One night, his hidden base received a visitor. No alarms were triggered. No guards heard a sound. Cameras froze. Weapons went offline. Only one recording remained. A man walking silently through the steel hallways. Stopping in front of the warlord's control room, the human didn't speak. He simply handed over a data shard. The warlord looked at it, confused. He activated it. It showed the complete list of every account, every betrayal, every life taken under his orders. The human had it all, details not even his own spies knew. Footage, voice logs, even private transmissions to allies he thought loyal. The human finally spoke. "You had your chance." And then he walked away. The next morning the warlord's forces were gone. Not killed. Gone. Vanished. Ships grounded. Networks locked. Funding erased. Every ally turned silent. He was alone. And across the galaxy, news of his collapse spread. Fast. Earth had not fired a single shot. Yet his war ended before it began. On Vectel 9, the Council received a message from Earth. We offered peace. He chose war. His own system judged him. Our role is finished. Velka read it aloud, her voice steady. Then our future is ours to build. The years that followed became known as the Time of Awakening. The Zarkel no longer called themselves Deathworlders. They stopped measuring strength by pain. Instead, they sent missions to every world they had once harmed. Not to beg, but to make things right. Earth never asked for thanks. Never showed force again, but everyone remembered. And across thousands of planets, the same phrase passed from species to species, whispered in fear, wonder, and respect. They classified themselves Deathworlders. Then met real danger, humans. Because the humans had taught them the most powerful truth of all. The strongest species in the galaxy is the one that doesn't need to conquer because it knows it already can.